India versus Pakistan, the mother of all battles. And what made this game even bigger was the fact that it was a virtual semi-final. Now, after the result, Indian fans have all the right to be disappointed, but what they can't complain about is the quality of the contest. A last over finish has ensured that it is worthy of being called an India-Pakistan classic. But joining me on the show this evening, Sunil Gavaskar and Nayan Mongia. Sunny bhai, with you first. Were you transported back to 1986 to that game you played in Sharjah? Similar events, and interestingly, I'm looking at that scorecard. 245 is what India made at that time as well.
Yes, but that time it had come down to the last ball, to the very last ball. Here, Shahid Afridi had a couple of balls left up his sleeve in case he missed or mistimed the odd one. But that six by Javed Miandad was off the very last ball of the match. So I guess the pressure then was much more than perhaps over here. And don't forget, that was also the finals. This is just a league stage game.
Right. So yeah, of course, there are differences between the two games. Now, Sunny bhai, coming back to this game, past few months we've gone hammer and tongs against the bowlers, and they've been the guilty party actually. But would you say today India were a few runs short on that wicket?
Yes, they were. I think there were a couple of wickets that were unnecessarily thrown away. If that hadn't happened, India could well have got over 270. And if you had a look at the statistics showed that every time in the last 2 or 3 years, Pakistan's been asked to chase more than 250. They've never been able to do it. So we were a few runs short. Maybe if it had been even 260, it could have been a different story. But of course, cricket cricket is a game of lots of ifs and buts. But at the end of the day, those ifs and buts don't really matter.
Right. On that subject, Nayan, we're talking about few runs short. Do you think, usually we've seen the Indian top order, whenever they do well, you set a big target. Today, would you say they were a bit edgy or maybe too pumped up because you were playing Pakistan? The usual, calmness wasn't around the top order?
No, I don't think so. They started off well. I think Rohit Sharma played superb inning. Again, the short selections, again, he needs to carry. The top three has to carry. I think he needs to play till 35-40 overs if he's batting on 50 and 60. You know that's an inexperience in middle order. So once after they lost the 3 wickets, I think there was a lot of pressure on Karthik and Raidu to build up the innings. And they are inexperienced. They are not a big shot makers. Karthik was under pressure. Raidu has just come in inexperienced. It's lucky that Jadeja was dropped, and that's how we could manage the 246. Had he been taken, I think probably 210, 220 would have been wind up.
Right. Another thing, Sunny bhai, and I want your opinion on that we've been noticing are these, short boundaries. I know the boundaries are the same for both teams, but it doesn't then really give, especially a spinner, that chance to, experiment or toss the ball up. We've seen, and the reason I ask you that question, some would say that the last couple of hits that Afridi hit for sixes probably didn't time it that well that we've seen Afridi do it. So in a time that the bowlers are already finding it very tough because of the rules, this is something that the organizers need to look into, probably have bigger boundaries?
Yes, I think so. I think they should, over here, I think it didn't make any sense, particularly for those straight boundaries to be brought in by as much as almost 15 meters. It didn't make any sense at all. But it wasn't just those 2 sixes. There were a few sixes hit of balls which were short, and they were deep into the crowd. So it wouldn't have mattered really whether the boundary was a regular boundary or not. It still would have been a 6. But the reason why these boundaries are brought in just that little bit more towards the advertising boards is so that today with the fielders sliding and trying to stop the ball, they shouldn't injure themselves. They shouldn't crash into those advertising boards. But that's fine for the boundaries where the advertising boards are closed. But for the straight boundaries, there was a big gap, 15 meters, and I think that really should not have been brought in.
Right, and then your opinion on that? We're going to soon have a situation where bowlers are going to retire from cricket, and they're saying no one wants to be a bowler in present circumstances then.
Yes, there could be possibility, but I don't think so. I think they are innovative. They are coming up. They have to find their own solution.
So are you okay with the boundaries being brought in?
I don't know what the rule says. You need to have certain rules and regulation for certain boundaries. How much meter do you have? You can't, bring closer boundaries. That is for sure.
Right. Okay. Another thing then, and you'd be the best person to answer that, was we're talking about Ravindra Jadeja getting that chance, but the context of the game, I'm going to talk about that missed chance of stumping. That could have been the game changer. What have you made in general? Because we saw that in the Sri Lankan game as well. What did you make of Karthik, just the keeper, not the batsman? Because I don't think he's got enough chances as the batsman, but what do you make of Karthik, the keeper?
Yeah, but he started off well, but somehow he has missed it. The confidence level is not there. I think he's too much moving. I think the basics are wrong. Basics are wrong. He doesn't squat. He's not in the subcontinent. You need to be on the lower side. He's just standing up. You just cannot judge the ball when you're standing up to the spinners or to the fast bowlers. Fast bowlers, sometimes you will be able to dive, but he's not able to do that as well. So I think the basics are wrong. He needs to go to the basics, get working onto the nets, and keep a lot of batsmen on turning track or half volleys, or tell any bowlers to bowl there and keep regularly. I think that is the most important. Under pressure, I have always seen him, he has always fumbled.
All right, so basics are wrong is what Nayan's saying. Sunny bhai, now to, we mentioned right at the start of the show that we've seen two good games by India. They may have lost, but two very exciting games. Now, I want to talk to you about Virat Kohli, the skipper. I've been reading social networking sites, internet, speaking to a few experts as well. I want your opinion. What did you make of Virat? Because many believe that, he's marshaled his troops really well, especially in these low-scoring games. How did you see him perform as a skipper?
Well, for somebody who's playing in one sort of major tournament, captaining for the first time in a major tournament, he captained in Zimbabwe. But really, Zimbabwe, as you would all expect, was never really going to challenge India. But in a major tournament, I think he's done well. He's shown promise. He's not been afraid to do the out-of-the-box thing. He has not been afraid to give the bowlers, as we saw today, short spells, 1 or 2 overs, and then move them around. So I don't think he's done badly at all. Yes, I think the loss today was a last-over loss. Even the loss to the Sri Lankans was a last-over loss. So yes, those were hard for India. But I don't think Virat Kohli has done badly at all.
All right, Nan, how much is he going to learn from these experiences? He's a young captain, these two very close games. How much is he going to learn for the future? Because many see him as a future captain now. Oh,
absolutely. I think huge. I think the last 2 games have taught him so many lessons. I think he has done wonderfully for me. I think, 70 for no loss today and then carrying on till the last over. I think he stretched the victory of Pakistan to the last over. I think it was just fantastic way he was rotating. He was giving a lot of confidence to the bowlers. Bowlers were responding to the captain, and he was very cool and calm on the field. I think I enjoyed watching him.
Okay, Sunny bhai, now one very important question, and this is a question that every Indian fan has been asking. What took so long for the Indian team to play Amit Mishra? Many would believe that the reason the match went to where it did towards the last over, thanks largely to his performance with the ball.
Well, that's a question that only the team management can answer. That's the only. I mean, they would know why they didn't play him at all in any of these matches in India. I think they did play him against Australia last year. And he started off, if I remember rightly, he started off well, bowling the first 6 or 7 overs for not too many. And then after that, in the last 3 or 4 overs, he was taken for plenty, ending up eventually with 70 runs against his name. But after that, I think he was left out again. It wasn't as if the other bowlers had been bowling their 10 overs for 20 runs or 30 runs. A leg spinner needs to have a longer spell. A leg spinner needs to believe that his captain has got confidence in him. A leg spinner also, therefore, if he feels the captain has got confidence in him, he is then going to try and bowl a little, give it a little bit of air. He's not going to try and bowl it flat, which is not going to be useful, because bowling it flat is not what leg spinners have to do. When they toss the ball up above the eye line, get the ball to turn, dip and turn, that's where they are successful. And Amit Mishra showed today that he could do it. So only the team management can answer that. In fact, the team management has got a lot to answer for.
Right. Any other question that you would like to ask the team management then?
I think the work ethic's been absolutely abysmal. Yesterday, for example, on the eve of what would be an India-Pakistan, one of the biggest of matches, I understand that there were only 2 players who came for practice. This business of optional practice has to be thrown out of the window. What do you mean optional practice? You are playing against everybody in India is looking forward to this match. And I do understand that there was a game that was played day before yesterday, so some of them might have had tired limbs. I can excuse Shikhar Dhawan from attending practice and a Virat Kohli, because both of them have done well in the previous 2 matches. But there was no real excuse for the others to miss out on practice. Once this business of optional practice, once the choice of optional practice is given, I think everybody will prefer not to be there. I believe only Cheteshwar Pujara and Varun Aaron were there, which actually is a little bit disappointing, because I would have thought that young Binny and Ishwar Pandey, who haven't played, they would also have liked to have turned up. I'm not too sure whether they were there or not. But this business of optional practice, this work ethic has been pretty abysmal. Absolutely. It's not been just in this tournament, it's been right throughout. And I think that is what has let Indian cricket down in recent times, because the work, the practice level, you have to practice a little bit. Even I understand that you don't want to practice 4 hours, because there's a match the next day and you played the previous day. But what about coming to the ground in the evening, under the lights, practicing under the lights, getting used to the feeling of how to bowl under the lights, how to bat under the lights. Do it for about 2.5 hours. Don't do a 4.5 hour session, but do practice. You're here not to be in your hotel rooms or to be out in the shops. You're here to represent India. And I think this is something which the team management certainly has not been seeing over the last 2 or 3 years, and that's been the disappointing aspect, and perhaps explains to you why Indian cricket hasn't won anything of note apart from the Champions Trophy.
All right, very interesting words there, and a pertinent point that Sani Bhai makes. And we've completely out of time, but I want a quick reaction on that, the point that he's making.
I fully endorse what Sani Bhai said. Absolutely endorse. I just give an example. I'm a chairman of selection committee for Baroda. We won the first game in one day international. There was 2 days off, and we were not practicing next day. I said, why? The reserves players who have not got enough opportunity, the players who have played the match, who has not batted, who has not bowled, let them go for practice. They said we don't have a net bowler. Even if you don't have a net bowler, you have a reserve bowlers who have a batsman who can bowl to you. Practice for 2-3 hours. God's sake, you have 2 days off. You just played 1 game and you won convincingly. You don't want to practice next day. Right. I absolutely endorse what Sani Bhai said.
Right. So what you're trying to make a point is, like Sani Bhai is saying, it just doesn't affect the international side, but sometimes, it goes down to what is happening in domestic cricket as well, because you tend to follow what the national side is doing. Thanks so much for joining us, Sunil Gavaskar and Nayan Mongia, on a day that India have virtually been knocked out of the Asia Cup.